Welcome to the Leadership Heart Podcast with Sandra J. Horton, the Growth Catalyst. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome this wonderful Monday to the Leadership Heart Podcast, the show where bold innovation meets conscious leadership. I'm your host, Sandra J. Horton, and I believe that leadership is not about titles. It's about impact and intention and the courage to serve others. On this podcast, we are going to go beyond strategy and surface level success to have real, honest conversations with change makers in health and tech, innovation, marketing, social impact, and beyond. You will hear truly from visionary leaders who are building organizations and supporting organizations, and welcome everyone to put people first, leaders who understand that in a world powered by technology, it's humanity that must lead the way. So if you are ready to lead with more purpose and clarity and heart, you are in the right place. So let's dive in. Let's welcome my beautiful guest to the stage. Jo, welcome. My esteemed Jo Madnani, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the Leadership Heart Podcast.
Thank you for having me, and happy Monday, everybody.
Happy Monday. I want to share a little bit about Jo, and I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. For those who are live with us here on this Monday morning, Jo is an award-winning marketing leader with over 2 decades of experience. She is known for her entrepreneurial spirit, her creative edge, and importantly, her multidisciplinary approach. Her campaigns have absolutely garnered accolades in the American Advertising Federation. She's contributed to fashion, to lifestyle publications in both India and in the US, including Midday, the Times of India, and Miami Herald, just to name a few. Originally from India, she has launched her US chapter in Fort Lauderdale in the early 2000s, later settling in the Northeast in 2012. She truly is a cross-continental journey, and it's combined with her expertise in branding and building and storytelling. She's led to examine the layered realities, this is important, of how race, gender, and identity intertwine. So I'm very excited, absolutely excited. And we're going to talk about a book that's coming out. And she's drawn to so many wonderful professional and personal experiences and really, truly channels these insights into her amazing debut, her work, which will be The Immigrant Journey and a Companion Journal. So welcome. Thank you so much, Jo, for coming on. Let's jump on in. Let's start about, we have the 3 pillars in the Leadership Heart Podcast. We start about self-discovery, we go through change, and then we talk about sustainable impact. So in your beautiful journey, let's dive into cultures. And, you know, as a woman who has come to a new country, what has the space that you've been able to create, your own culture you're bringing with you, what happens? What if the space between cultures wasn't lost, but a canvas of rediscovering your authentic self? Can you share with us what that may look like?
Yes. So it's been quite the arc. I didn't really wake up to this realization when I first moved here 20 years ago. So at first, 20 years ago, when I first came to this country, I was always swinging between extremes, like extremes of fitting in and standing out, in the sense that I was so eager to embrace the new culture that I was trying to assimilate real fast. And it didn't really serve me because it was not reflective of who I entirely am. The second extreme is standing out. So, you know, India is a very diverse place, and there are so many different paths to India. In terms of languages, there are over 30 languages spoken. There are so many states that each has their own cultural nuance. So when you first meet here, there's no guarantee that you are definitely going to get along with fellow Indians. because your upbringing is different, your conditioning is different. So I couldn't really connect with the first few of my fellow countrymen, and not without reason. It's I've always been in the creative field, so I was a bit of an outlier there, and most people I met were either in engineering, in IT, some were doctors. And I've experienced that in India too, so that wasn't a new feeling. So the other
Mhm.
extreme that I started gravitating towards was standing out a bit too much because of my creative background, and I was like, okay, I'm different. But I realized that the happy and the more balanced way to do this is to sit in the middle and to embrace all aspects of your identity
Mhm.
unapologetically. So I think that's where my biggest learning was, to find that groove and to be comfortable and to make others feel comfortable. So even if I'm not reflecting the background that they are from, I just want to make
Mhm.
sure that I'm honoring their journey as well as mine. So that was the biggest, I guess, realization I had.
Yeah, and Joe, it really comes back to really the most important thing if we look at self-discovery, it's about our values, isn't it? It's really knowing about what's important to ourselves and how these early experiences, so wherever you're coming from, whether you're born in your country of origin or you've moved places, really knowing who you are, what your values hold are so critical. So how have your values then shaped these early experiences that have really formed who you are as a leader today then?
Yes, very, very deep question. So I'm going to
Mhm,
go at it one step at a time. So, one of my biggest values growing up in India, I lost my dad very early, around 15. And so I lived with my mom and my sister, and we were three women just three women against the world.
mhm,
And so, one of the biggest values for me was really leaning into being independent, being sorted when it comes to what I really want from life in terms of a career, in
mhm,
terms of a life. And the most important word or value for me was balancing all of that. So
mhm,
that early fire that I experienced because of this loss, that really helped me through when I migrated. And it was important because I learned to rely on myself. I learned to understand different contexts very quickly, because a lot shifts when you're in that, at that tender age, your whole world changes. So being able to adapt to that reality really gave me a lot of resilience, that I was able to carry through when I moved countries. So that was one. The other value that I saw my dad practice firsthand was kindness. My dad
mm,
was also a product of migration, because India experienced a huge split in 1947 because of the colonial residue from the British. And
mhm,
so his family and my mom's family and my ancestors, they all migrated to India, and they started from nothing. And my dad was a thriving entrepreneur when I was born. So we were, upper middle class, had everything going for us, all thanks to him. But I saw him firsthand on how he dealt with people in terms of his leadership style. Number one, he always created space for his team. He always, encouraged people to focus on their personal lives so that they could bring their whole selves to work. So this, I mean, at the time when I was a teenager, I didn't understand all of this in the way I'm articulating it now. But when I moved
mhm,
here and when I started leading teams, or when I grew up in the agency business in India, and you start people managing and you learn the ropes along. So I started to put that in practice, and I was like, okay, that is amazing when you see someone in their whole light versus putting them in a box of their title or where they're from. I think it's important to focus on their talent, it's important to focus on their style. So that was the second value. And the third value is, learn this the hard way. The whole world at any point will try to remind you that you're not enough. You're not productive
mm,
enough. You're not sensitive enough. You're not doing this as a woman. You're not doing that as a woman. And I think the most important value I learned was to tune out the noise and to really dive
mhm,
into what's important to you. These three things really held me and they still hold me. As
mhm,
every time I'm faced with I'm in a transition now. So every time when I'm in a transition, I go back to these values and I remind myself that, you know what, your independence, your ambition, your kindness, and the fact that it doesn't matter what you do, you can have 10,000 accolades in your name, someone will still find something to make you feel less than. And I think that every woman should learn how to just tune that out and focus on
Hmm.
the progress they are making.
Wow. I love that. And thank you. Those are powerful values. And, I reflect back into my own personal journey. I didn't lead my own values until I stopped and actually made a conscious decision to do that, to actually define. I was led by my family values. And I think that can show up for many individuals until you stop, pause, and interrupt that and say, what do I want? So, from a very early age, you've learned that from your dad and what he showed you, and then you took that on. So how do we build that alignment between who you are and how you lead? So you know your values. So what's next? What do we do next? Actually be in action.
So I think, look, the most important uh, aspect that people look for in a leader is that they want to be seen.
Mhm.
And I think in there's so much jargon going on in this space right now that we forget that it's so basic. When you see people for what they are carrying into a team and you acknowledge it, I think that's the biggest point of entry to
Mhm.
seeing how what someone's talent is, what is that intrinsic light they're bringing to work or in their own leadership journey, right? Because a lot of times
Mhm.
when the next gen comes in and we have to teach them how to lead, we have to teach them how to uh, you know balance leading up and leading down, but at the same time we have to remind them that we see them for who they are, because that ability to spot something unique in someone is a big part of leadership. And so
Mhm.
that's one aspect. The other aspect is we have to lead by example. Leading is more about serving than anything else. So I think that, to me, my personal philosophy is, because of these shifting experiences in my life, early in my life, losing a parent, moving countries without knowing anything, then moving states, I've realized that the few mentors that I cross paths with, the biggest learning that I've had from them is really they've seen me for who I am and not where I'm from or what I've contributed or what's my title. And to date, every, some of the managers that I've worked with, they're still in my corner. They still check in on me. There's no stake, there's no personal stake. I'm not delivering anything for them or I'm not doing anything to make them look good. So I think that's been my biggest philosophy that I'm carrying through. I myself am
Mhm.
trying to volunteer as a mentor in some organizations now, and this is what I've learned from them. So I'm very grateful for those experiences where you give a person a safe space to grow. And that's the
Wow.
biggest gift the leadership, your leadership can provide to somebody. So I try to carry that forward.
And I love that. And it really aligns with what you're creating because you are a creative soul and you have done exceptional work. And you talk about what's coming up in your book, and it's about that two-part experience that speaks directly to the split heart, the reality of living between worlds. And I think this is so critical for anyone who's come to a new country, who has different ethnicities. How do you land in a way that honors your values, like we're talking about, but also allows you to keep those values in your heart? And I understand that the immigrant journey is really that collection of those kind of lyrical micro narratives about exploring your identity, your belonging, and that invisible grief, perhaps, that immigrants do carry. Can you share a little bit more about that? Because I think that's right in alignment with this whole self discovery.
Yes, so that has been evolutionary because it started off, the lyrical and micro narrative started off as a book of poems. And I was really hustling for 8 months. I tried to peddle it to literary journals and whatnot, and it wasn't resonating. And ironically, all of these journals, they wanted, diversity in their lineup of writers that they're representing, and I just wasn't hearing anything back. And then I thought to myself, I'm in marketing and branding, so it's like the cobbler's problem, right? Like, I can make shoes for you, I can write you a branding
Yeah,
strategy in my sleep, but I was
yeah.
like, something about this is, I'm not positioning this correctly. So what can I do to position it differently? And I thought to
Mhm.
myself, I'm like, okay, if I put myself in the reader's shoes, someone who has been born and brought up in one country and has never moved, what about this would appeal to them? So
Hmm.
I was trying to find the common ground. So one thing I realized, that even though I'm calling it the immigrant journey, it's actually speaking to anyone who's been in between versions of themselves. And we've all been there, right? So
Hmm.
like, you are a high school senior about to step into a college. It's a whole new world, it's a whole new context. Or you're a first time mom or a first time parent or a dad, and you don't know this world. Children don't come with manuals. Again, you have to shed some parts of your identity to now make space for the new. So really, this
Hmm.
is speaking to anyone who's in between worlds. Now, my overarching metaphor in this is moving countries, but really it's moving between identities. That could be one thing. So I thought, okay, somebody picks up this book. It's beautiful. The poems are great. They're very evocative. They're very powerful because I talk about stereotyping intersectionality. But then what's in it for them? So then I
Hmm.
got this epiphany where, why don't I create a second part to this experience where I'm giving them a vessel, a safe space for them to sit with the discomfort, sit with that version that's outdated, but the new version is still a work in progress. So it's like as though they're in between chapters, but I'm giving them a voice by giving them 52 guided prompts, one for each week of the year. And this was further validated when I ran this by someone like you, who's in leadership, a coach. He's way senior, he's a friend of the family. So he's half Irish, half American. And
Yeah.
I said, before I get too ahead of myself, the marketing and branding person in me,
Yeah.
I was like, Mr. Jonathan, please look at this and be my mirror. And if this is,
Yeah.
not, if it's not holding my truth, I have no ego. I
Yeah.
can stop it right here.
Yeah.
My God, I got the most encouraging piece of feedback
Oh,
from him. It was 3 paragraphs explaining how this is needed in his work as a coach. And also he's a licensed therapist. So he's like, people will really resonate with this. This is giving me a safe space to talk about that split heart. So that
mhm.
really pushed me over the finish line, and I changed the genre. I evolved it to self-help, and
Yeah.
I'm going to launch it as a 2-part experience. So it came
Oh,
a
I'm
full circle.
excited. I'm so excited for you because, this really talks about, stepping into that space, owning yourself, knowing your values, and then taking action. And, the intersection, because you do brand work so well and at the top of that edge, it really speaks about how you go through change and how you look at change. And for me, change readiness is the most critical piece for us in this chaotic world that we're living in right now. So, how has the innovation under pressure brought out your boldest leadership? Because that's what I'm seeing. Like you're talking about transition, you're talking about going through change. So, how has innovation under your pressure, under what we're going through, really brought out your boldest leadership?
So pressure is the right word here. And
Yeah.
I actually had a chance opportunity um, last year. Actually, sorry, 2023. And I got 5 minutes of fame with the Fast Company at the Fast Company Innovation Festival, where they invited readers to share in 5 minutes what they think of innovation. So, as usual, the branding person in me, I wanted to honor my Eastern roots and
Hmm.
combine them with my Western sensibilities. And I was like, okay, what did I think of innovation when I was growing up? So, there's a
Hmm.
brilliant word in Hindi, which is now actually, believe it or not, a part of the Oxford Dictionary since 2017. It's called Jugaad. And
Ah,
Jugaad,
thank you.
yeah, so Jugaad means really like exactly how you described it beautifully. You said, what do you do when you're under pressure? How do you innovate? So that's exactly how Jugaad was born as a concept. It's the really a very scrappy way to innovate when you're under pressure, when you don't have many resources, and you just have to wing. I wouldn't say wing it, but it's like you just have to hack your way through it. And
Hmm.
there are many successful examples of how some Indians started adopting that, and the British loved it so much they put it in the dictionary. So I spoke about 5 minutes and how I connect that to my trajectory. I've had a very unconventional trajectory. Part of it is strategic because, when you move countries, I'm not going to just wait for things to happen. I have to make it happen. Part of it is serendipity because I had no interest in coming to America. I trailed my husband's job. It was supposed to be for a year. And then things kept changing in my life, and it was a maze. So now through this maze, what does someone like me do who has a creative soul? I'm not a doctor, I'm not an engineer. Like, India is a very academic country. My entire family is full of engineers, and I'm the only one. My mom still doesn't know what I do. She thinks I'm dabbling in PR and fashion. She's a writer. I don't know what she does. So so again, Jugaad at work, right? So
Yeah.
I broke it down and connected my unconventional career trajectory to Jugaad. And so I took the word innovation, and there are three principles that are buried, that as they apply to my life in innovation.
Mhm.
So first one is in, the word in. And my brand name, my consulting alias is also the ideas in. So I was trying to be very clever here.
Yeah, that's
Um,
really clever.
so the in is, look, when you're put in a position like me, where you didn't come chasing a master's degree, you didn't come chasing the American dream, now you have to make your life work. It's
Mhm.
all good talk, but now you have to make it work. So I started my life in Florida, and I volunteered my time at an art school. I went with the intention of earning an advertising degree, but the department chair said, you already have a master's degree. This course doesn't make sense for you. And I stalked her so much that she said, listen, I've run my honors program as an agency, and the students are graphic designers. You have a copy background. Why don't you come and volunteer once a week? So
Wonderful.
I took that opportunity up, because anything to stay connected to the creative universe, right? So
Mhm.
a year went by, and I still had my heavy accent. I was still fresh off the boat. And, she and I talked about the possibility of teaching there. And she must have seen something in me, because I was like, I'm a 5'2" woman with a heavy accent. And like, are these kids
It's
going to understand
strong.
what I'm saying? So she said, yes, they will. And so I had no idea ever in my life that I'm going to be a professor, adjunct faculty. So I took that up. There are times where I succeeded. There are times when I made mistakes, because it was a first. But the principle was take the N.
Yeah.
I didn't know where the volunteer gig was going to go, right? It just happened. And then through that network, I had some really nice design partners, and we started, consulting for hospitals together. So we started making creative campaigns, and that's how, incidentally, my boutique consultancy found me. I always say that I didn't find it, it found me. So I chanced upon a brilliant CEO mentor in that process. So took one in, and two things came out of it. The third in, I joined a writers group in Fort Lauderdale, because I used to write for Midday and Times of India and in India, and
Mhm.
journalism was my minor. So I had this habit of, maintaining journals and creative writing. And I was like, I'm just writing in a vacuum. I think I need to share my work with others, and get critiques too, right? Because you cannot create in isolation. So I joined the writers group, and the leader of that group, Shelley, she was under the weather one day, and she said, listen, I'm editing some stories for a magazine, and I really need your help. Would you mind looking it over? So I looked it
Mhm.
over, and then that's how I got into fashion writing in Fort Lauderdale. So
Wow.
that's the first principle in. The second principle is no. Now, mind you, I was in my late 20s, and you always want what you don't have. So I kept
Mm.
pining for, like, oh my God, I'm in marketing, I'm in branding, I've worked on Ogilvy in India, and by now I should have been on this creative track, and I should be a VP, and the shoulds, right? The shoulds and the coulds, like, really
It
racing
kind
through
of
my
popped up.
mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what my naive self didn't realize at the time is, like, hey, you came from nothing, and now you have three tracks. And yes, you were in Ogilvy, and you could have been a creative director, and insert whatever title. But for the three tracks to happen, I had to say no to the corporate track.
Mhm.
And so the second principle, which is like my favorite, is let the no happen. It's okay. Sometimes a no only means there's a bigger yes, or um, you have to be very strong and say no. So I said, I did say, I was very sensible when I kept saying no. Like, I didn't want to get too much into the cultural aspect of my country in America. I have wanted to have some boundaries up because I like my creative
Hmm.
time. I like my solo time. So say no as often as you can, respectfully. Um, Second principle. The third principle is on. So innovation has on in it, and on is, as I told you earlier, I used to keep swinging between extremes. Like I used to try to fit in too much or stand out too much. And suddenly, when I gave birth to my daughter, I realized, you know what? I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to
Mm.
be fully Joe. I may not be a cup of tea. I really not. I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm a bit too much. I've been told I'm too much, but I'm okay with it. I would rather have people who are okay with my quirks and I'm okay with theirs than being force fitted into a group situation where I'm miserable 90% of the time. So I learned
Hmm.
to be very comfortable with it. And like my most favorite thing to do with my daughter, my husband was traveling a lot. And as you know, these kids, they don't come with a manual. And I was a first time mom,
Yeah.
thoroughly intimidated by this job title. You know, my most favorite thing to do with her was I would take her bike and we would go on the Fort Lauderdale beach. I would get a cup of Starbucks and we would just walk on the beach. And to me, that was
Sounds
like a
lovely.
party. Yeah, it was like a party. And
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
this is my most authentic self. So I learned to lean into more of that, like keep that authentic self on. And you
Yeah.
might repel some people, which I'm sure I do, or you might find your tribe. And the more I did that, the more comfortable I started feeling. So I connected that with Jugaad, the innovation part. It's scrappy. It's really scrappy, right? Like you come with these preset ideas. Like I was so arrogant. I was like, oh, I've worked with global agencies in India. And why am I being asked questions like, where are you really from? And how do you speak English so well? And I was like, okay, this mindset is not helping me.
Hmm.
So let me start at the bottom. And if that meant volunteering my time, if that meant charging way less than I would, I started doing that. But I'm glad I
Hmm.
did because it opened up a whole new world. And
Hmm.
that was a reward in and of itself. So
And
that's how.
you shifted the mindset. This is where I think it's important, Joe. I wanted to just jump in on this piece because it was a mindset. It was a choice that you made. And I love how you have broken down innovation just like that in Jakarta. And you're living it, you're being it, which is the power. So that is so powerful. So with that mindset, maybe you can give my listeners, two other things maybe around mindset that will help us to stay grounded when this time of chaos and transition is what we're talking about today as well, right? And how you navigate that complexity and change.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So the one thing, I'm a huge fan of Dr. Carol Dweck's book, The Mindset.
Oh, love Carol
Huge
Dweck.
fan. So
So
I
good.
think that has really helped. It's been a port in the storm for me,
Hmm.
because it challenges your fixed ideas. And when you
Hmm.
migrate or when you're in between versions of yourself, you have many fixed ideas. Like, when I got laid off recently and I'm thinking, oh, I was so attached to that old identity, and her
Hmm.
thinking helped me flip, like,
Yep.
growth mindset. It's a new beginning. It's a new beginning.
Yep.
Second is what I have said earlier in the podcast is really don't be afraid to embrace your intersectionality. You can be a parent, you can be a coach, you can be a full time worker. And if someone is not giving you the job, or if someone is not giving you a seat at the table because you are holding multitudes, then take that as a blessing, because I'd rather you be somewhere where your multitudes are honored and where you are looked at your whole self versus what can you deliver for me today. You're allowed to
Mm.
be many things in one, and always be comfortable in in sharing that with the world. We're not meant to be monoliths. We're humans. We're meant to be complex. So why not embrace that complexity?
I love that. And that really goes into sustainable impact. And I can't believe we're at the top of the hour almost about inclusive branding in action, because taking your whole authentic self, who you are, the intersectionality of all the pieces of ourselves. So, what does it truly look like as a brand expert to bring in inclusive branding to real life today?
Yes, I love that question for many reasons. So
Mhm.
I think the most important part of inclusive branding is follow the insight. not a box. Don't check the demographic and psychographic box alone. And this is going to crack you up, this example. But I've said this before. I'm a Southeast Asian woman. I love single malt whiskey. But are the algorithms seeing me? No, they're completely ignoring me because of my last name. So I'm challenging the brands to think about people as intersections rather than just
Mhm.
a box that they're checking off. So insight means looking at what someone is really interested in, not because of their background, but really diving deeper into psychographics and then understanding
Mhm.
that insight and bringing that to branding work. Because people are not just like 45-year-old X box, X person, X nationality. They have interests. And how can you go beyond the algorithm and see their humanness? So, I mean,
Mm.
AI can be an ally, but really intersecting all dimensions of understanding human nature and then taking that to branding, that's what excites me the most. And I think that's what needs to be done in today's day and age.
It's like multiple perspectives, and it brings me to the question around, because you help organizations create these safe spaces. But again, creating that safe space so all voices can be heard really is about that multi-dimensional depth that leaders have to look at different perspectives, invite different ways of being. So what have you found successful working with so many different types of organizations in the branding work that you've done?
So I think in healthcare, I've noticed that the most,
Mhm.
where you look at biomarkers, you look at disease states, and you look at really what's going on in the person's life. And
Mhm.
I'd love to see that translate to consumers and beyond. And yes,
Mhm.
influencers are changing the way we are used to looking at research, but I wish it was not so TikToky all the time. I wish it was more genuine.
Mhm.
So I would, if there's the one thing I would like to bring in my own branding work is to keep the narrative as genuine and as real as possible.
I love that, and my heart at the Leadership Heart podcast is happy right now because we're at this intersection, and it's really about the human centeredness, and we have to be as good as we can be as amazing leaders. So if we're bringing in our ego and we're not open to others' perspectives, like we're talking about, guess what can happen? Whatever we create is going to have that same bias, those same stereotypes. So we have to stop and interrupt all of those pieces in order to be the best versions of ourselves authentically. So that goes back to the very beginning, Jo, when we were talking about how you were very clear in knowing your values and having that focus. So, what do you think the future looks like for you as you're building, not only your marketing consulting business, but you're going to launch your new book? What is your leadership, your legacy going to look like? What are you hoping to leave with this world? And welcome everyone who's here. Hi, beautiful friend. Uh, Zaya's coming in. Hello from Kenya. Welcome, welcome. Thanks, Pisha. Over to you, Jo. What legacy are you leaving, friend?
So again, I would love to leave the legacy where we think wholeheartedly and not from a split heart. And that split heart doesn't mean just like between countries, but in between
Hmm.
ourselves too. So think wholeheartedly about what you're keeping on the table as a professional and in your personal life. And that means going beyond your comfort, right? Going beyond what you know. It's accepting where the other person is coming from. So through my work, through my journal, through my branding, this is the one thing that I would love to focus on. It's like embrace your and your intersectionality, because that's where innovation lies. Innovation is not a straight line. It's always a
Hmm.
multitude of things.
Oh, I love that. And I love the and word. And's a powerful connector, isn't it? Instead of a but or an or, like the shame, blame, release that, and it's an and. It's always building. There's always a new opportunity beyond what you're in this moment. So as we come to, conclude our podcast today, Jo, I'd love for you to share any last thoughts that you have that you would like to share with my audience, whether it's about your beautiful upcoming book and the journal that's attached to it, or just some closing thoughts. I want to leave it open to you for a few moments.
Thank you for that. So I would like to leave the readers with one line from my book. I just organized a Diwali dinner last week. and I used the same theme for that dinner. And so the one line that I would like to leave your readers and leaders with is, your light has a place in this world. And my hope for you is for you to own it wholeheartedly.
I love that. I love that. It's your light. It's not like the essence of who you are. And at the Leadership Heart podcast, that's what we're really, truly, what I'm hoping to do is to touch your heart. What are you hearing today? Is there one aspect, one action, one thought, one feeling that you get from this that then you can bring into your life? What is it that you can do differently or to enhance? That's why I do this podcast, Jo. And thank you for bringing that, because it's about the light. It's how can we be of service? What can we bring that's authentically ourselves? Not copies of someone else or what your parents maybe perhaps thought you should be or could be. It's about the essence of who you are. And so thank you for bringing that to a beautiful conclusion. How can my listeners, my readers, viewers be able to get a hold of you, Jo?
Yes, so thank you for that. So for my branding work, my website is theideasin.com. My book, which is very close to launch, you can find me at authorjo.com. And on Instagram, my bookstagram is at the immigrant lens. So you can find me at any of these places. And Sandra, while I have the floor, thank you for having me. And I love the brand name of your podcast. Leadership is mostly about the heart and not so much about the brain and the boxes that organizations believe we should check. So it has been an absolute honor to be here. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Jo, sorry, but I'm joyful. So
Joy. Yes.
that just came out. I love that. I love when the joyfulness comes from us, because that's what we're exuding, is the gratitude for the moments, the opportunity to show up, to be courageous. So I go back to, as we conclude the podcast today, go back to what you've heard today again. I repeat a bit of what I said earlier, is what truly has touched you in your heart space. Get out of your head, go to your heart, then connect to your head, to a higher calling and consciousness. That's how we beautifully grow, with an open mindset, and then we take action. And so for me, to you, Jo, thank you from my heart to your heart for your great words, your good work that you are doing. I'm so excited. I will be getting that book and the accompanying journal, and I know it will ignite my life and activate success. And so I thank everyone for coming today. Thank you for joining. Make sure you give us a follow. And later this week, we will have another incredible guest coming to the podcast. And I just want to honor our space. And thank you again, Jo, for your heart and your shares today. Thank you. With
Thank
greatest
you.
gratitude, I'll catch you on the other side.